Hey folks, how's it going? Rum Gaming here, back with another video. In today's episode, we're going to do a quick review on where we're at with our 3 healing classes that we are taking to Keystone Hero. We're going to do a quick look at our overall item level, just kind of general thoughts on each specific spec, kind of how we're performing, how we think the rotation kind of feels. And then we're going to do a quick look at where we were last week with Raider IO score and where we're currently standing with our Raider IO score. So we do have some overlap in the affixes from last week and this week. So we have some content in here that had like Tyrannical Afflicted, and then this week we have Fortified Incorporeal. So there'll be a little bit of mix of footage in here. To me, this week Incorporeal did feel a little bit easier than Afflicted was last week. Also, last week was a Tyrannical week, so in my opinion, it's just a little bit harder to heal on Tyrannical weeks. And on Fortified weeks, it's typically a little bit harder to time the key, because typically you get all that increased health right on all the trash packs. It just takes longer to kind of grind through the dungeon. So I always like to say Tyrannical weeks are kind of survivability checks, and Fortified weeks are going to be more DPS checks. So with that being said, I am definitely finding this week with Fortified to be a little bit easier to heal than last week's Tyrannical. I also just learned for the first time that priests can mind control the Incorporeal mob, and the Incorporeal can actually work against all of the other mobs around it and apply the debuff to them rather than your party. So that's kind of a cool little trick that I didn't realize before. But we're still in pretty similar key range, right? We haven't gotten that much new gear from the past few days ago. So we're still kind of in that 13 to 14 kind of key range. So I'm hoping by the end of this week, we're kind of in the 15 to 16 range, but we'll kind of see what kind of gear we get. So we'll start with the Mistweaver Monk, and I'm just going to assume that all my specs last week were 500 IO score. I didn't really keep track of it just because my score was so low, it wasn't even worth keeping track of really. But from this point going forward, I'm going to keep kind of a weekly track of our progress, and I'll let you guys know how much IO we've gained from the previous week. So this week on the Mistweaver Monk, we're sitting at an 843 Mythic Plus rating, which will be a 343 rating increase from last week. Here's a quick look at our runs by dungeon on Fortified versus Tyrannical week. You can see we still have a lot of work to do this week on Fortified. We had a whole bunch of keys we weren't able to complete last week on Tyrannical. So really just trying to round this out on pretty much all of the classes. And then we're also up about 5 item levels from last week, sitting at 450 up from 445. We have 2 trinkets right now that are really bringing us down an item level of 437 and a 441. We also have a waist that's 428, a chest that is all the way down at 418, and then some 433 wrist. I think if we can get those up to like 460 eye level, then I think our overall item level will be very close to 460. In terms of gear upgrades, we did get a pretty sweet ring from the end of the 14 Atal key. About a 12% upgrade over what we had prior, and it had actually BIS stats. Well, not perfectly BIS, right? We could have had more haste over versatility, but we got a haste versus ring, so really happy with that, our 2 main stats. We also did an 11 Galakrin's Fall and got a pretty sweet pair of boots. They were 41% upgrade over what we previously had, and the stats on these boots were haste mastery. And then if you watched our weekly vault video, we also got a pair of 473 gloves, which we have turned into our 4 set. So the 4 set is officially complete on the Mistweaver Monk, so we're in a really good spot to move forward with him. Next we have our Holy Paladin, who's sitting at about 445 eye level. We're up about 5 item level from last week, which was about 440 item level. Once again, similar to the Monk, we just have a few pieces that are really bringing us down. We got 2 424 rings, we got a 424 main hand, 424 belt, then we also have a 424 neck and wrist. Now, one thing that the Holy Pally does have going for them is I was able to complete my 4 set much earlier than the other 2 characters, so I've had this 4 set for quite some time now. So it's really nice to have that, considering that this is the most difficult healer, for me at least, out of the 3. So I will take any advantage that I can get right now on Holy Paladin. As far as our Raider IO score, we are currently sitting at 1244, so this is actually higher than the other two classes, probably just because I've played more on this character than the other two. So as you can see here, I have 4 fortified dungeons that I've not completed yet, so I'm hoping to get those complete by the end of the week to kind of round out the fortified list. Overall, we're in a pretty similar key range with this character, around the 13 to sort of 15 key range. Another piece of gear we also got was from our Mythic Plus vault. We got a 470 chest piece, which was a really good upgrade from what we previously had. So we had a 424 chest previously, so we got a ton of stamina out of this new chest piece, as well as about 300 more intellect. After sort of getting a feel for these 3 healer specs, I think Holy Paladin is going to be the most difficult for me. I don't know why, it just feels like it doesn't have quite the throughput of the other 2 classes. It's a little bit more hands-on in terms of the healing department, right? A lot of micromanagement, a lot of spot healing, versus something like a Mistweaver Muck. I can throw down my Phaline Stomp, do damage, and it heals. With this priest, I can get out my atonements, do damage, and it heals. And for Holy Paladin, it's just a little bit different. Like, sure, I do heal through my judgment quite a bit, but it's more kind of based around glimmers, spreading out holy shocks, using my free flash of light procs, and there's just a lot of, I guess you could just consider it kind of a high APM healer. Kind of find myself looking at my cooldowns and my abilities more than actually what's going on in front of me, causes me to step in stuff, and it's just a little bit harder to heal on, in my opinion. Now, with that being said, you do have Lay on Hands and you do have a bubble, so you do have immunity, which the other 2 specs do not have. So they do at least have that going for them. But overall, I do think Holy Paladin will be the hardest healer for me on this challenge. But with all that being said, hoping to be around 1500 IO by the next time I make this video. So I'm hoping to get about 200 to 300 IO score. I hope to keep that up week to week, getting at least 200 to 300 IO score. I know that will slow down a bit once I get into higher keys, but right now that's kind of the pace I'm setting for myself. And up next, we of course have the Discipline Priest, who I've probably covered more than any other class so far in this series. Mainly that's because this guy has started from like 415 item level. And right now, he is sitting at 449 item level after about a week of gameplay. Now, this guy has gotten a ton of gear over the past week or so I'm not going to go over absolutely everything. We did get some new 454 shoulders, as well as a 467 chest piece. So with that, we're able to lock in our 2 set. So we're 3 out of 4 in terms of tier set at the moment, so we just need 1 additional piece to kind of lock in that 4 set. We also got a pretty solid staff from last week, which is a 454 piece, which was an upgrade from a 424 piece actually. So this ended up netting us probably about 700 overall intellect and about 800 stamina. So this was a huge upgrade, probably the biggest upgrade we got outside of our tier set. So I want to at least include this one on the list. We also got a 460 ring, which was pretty nice. It gave us the haste, but we didn't get critical strike out of it. We only got versatility. But on the bright side, we did get a socket out of it, about a 40% upgrade. So a nice ring from what we previously had. And we also have a bunch of other various pieces I kind of talked about in some of my previous videos. We crafted some gear through the crafting system. We got our 415 pieces up to about 447 pieces. So one thing the priest has going for them over the other 2 is they don't have that many pieces that are really bringing their overall item level down. We have a 434 neck and a 421 back that we're trying to get rid of. Outside of that, everything else is pretty much on par with each other. Now in terms of Raider IO score, we're sitting at 841 on this character. You can see on the fortified side, we got a ton of dungeons we haven't completed. So hoping to at least get this 3/4 of the way filled out before reset into Tyrannical Week. Overall, though, pretty happy with the Discipline Priest. I'm really trying to learn how to use Power Infusion, trying to keep high uptime on that. It is kind of on a short cooldown, so you kind of have to be paying attention to it. And then also Mindbender. I've never played around a cooldown like this to where you pop the cooldown and then you have to spam a damage ability to reduce the cooldown on it. So you really have to pay attention to Mindbender, since it seems like our tier set and just everything kind of revolves around it. So by keeping high uptime on those 2 main abilities, 2 core abilities, I've really gotten a lot more throughput from my healing and damage. Now, since the Discipline Priest is missing their force set, that's going to be one of my goals this week. I'm hoping I can knock that out here in the next couple of days to get my force set, and that will have this character in a pretty good spot and kind of have his bases covered to progress into a little bit higher keys this week. So with that being said, we're going to continue to push throughout the week. I think from a healing perspective, it's not a really bad week at all to heal. Incorpo is kind of annoying. It's really just going to be a kind of a DPS race to time the key, kind of depending on how the tank places mobs and Sanguine on top of Fortified. Those two kind of synergize really well with each other. So that's going to be kind of one of the main issues with timing keys this week, I think. So for now, that's kind of where we're at on these three characters. In the future, I'd like to do more deep dives and kind of overviews of, me actually healing Mythic Plus dungeons, kind of, some funny clips of us wiping, kind of my thought process of what I'm thinking about when I'm healing a specific encounter. But at the moment, the key levels are so low, I'm not sure that would necessarily be super interesting content. But once we get probably around to the, probably 2K range, I will probably start doing more deep dives into some of my content. I'll just, throw up a couple full Mythic Plus runs, and I'll just kind of commentate over those runs and just kind of give you guys an overview of the whole dungeon. But with that being said, that pretty much sums up this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and then we'll see you on the next one.